It's a pleasure to be here and to moderate this session. I must thank Professor Jivika Vireva and the organizers for inviting me to do the moderating. It's a very important and interesting session as I see. The topic, as Professor Vireva said, precision agriculture, global status and prospects for developing countries. This is the 6th iPURSE pre-conference webinar series as far as I understand. We have 2 presenters today, and before I start introducing the first presenter and eminent character, let me also tell you some ground rules of this webinar. We'll not encourage you to raise hand and ask questions verbally. Sorry about that, because that will disturb the presenters as well as it will disturb the proceedings as well. Instead, we would like you all to use the Q&A facility in the bottom of your screen, as well as the chat box to post your questions so that I can direct those questions to the relevant presenter. Mind you, please make sure that you position the name of the presenter so that I can direct the question to the said person, and that can cut short the time and so on in terms of answering. With that little bit of ground rules, let me now introduce the first speaker for the day, Professor John Fulton. Dr. Fulton is a professor in the Food, Agriculture and Biological Engineering Department at the Ohio State University in USA. His research and extension focuses on precision agriculture, machinery automation, and use of spatial data to improve crop production and farm business. He helps lead the digital program at Ohio State University that includes the OSU eFields On-Farm Research Network, and is serving as president-elect for the International Society of Precision Agriculture. A short introduction, but speaks of thousands of words and character about Dr. Fulton. We don't have any other better person to open today's session. Dr. Fulton, over to you.
Well, good evening and good morning to everyone. And I want to say thank you for inviting me to participate. I look forward to this, and I will get my presentation ready here. Can you see that okay, and also hear me fine?
Yeah, Dr. Fulton, go ahead.
All right, well, great. So again, thank you, and thank you for that nice introduction. And as I mentioned, I'm very excited to be here, and hopefully my comments will kind of challenge your thoughts, but at the same time we'll have plenty of questions at the end to talk through. You know, I'm going to just touch on some things I see as I travel globally. I know of recent with the pandemic that there hasn't been a lot of travel, but you know, when we think about precision agriculture and the new technologies and what I call practices being implemented, there's a lot of change happening in the world as it relates to food and energy production at the farm level. So hopefully I'll start with a little bit about me. As mentioned, I'm John Fulton and a professor. I've been in academics for nearly 20 years, and really been focused through my career on new technology, precision agriculture, and today primarily teach. So I teach undergraduate students in our system. I have several graduate students, and so we conduct quite a bit of research as it relates to North American crop production, really focused on crop production in what I do. So I travel globally, work with a lot of companies, kind of do some consulting, and also do educational pieces like this as well. So a little bit of background with me. What we're doing at Ohio State, I thought maybe just for researchers and academics, a little bit about what we do at Ohio State. Currently, and we'll get to this next, we call it digital ag today at Ohio State. We'll talk, like I mentioned, let's talk about that here in a minute. But we're teaching 4 digital ag courses today. So as students come, they have options to take 4 different courses. We have a strong graduate student program. We have probably on the order of about 15 graduate students focused on precision agriculture at Ohio State today. And for professionals, so people out working and wanting to learn a little bit more about precision or digital agriculture, we have 3 or building 3 professional certificate courses. This gives people ability to come and either refresh themselves on what precision ag and digital ag is, to if they don't have a background in it, they can learn more about it. And then, as I mentioned, we do quite a bit of research in what we call extension. So that's talking to farmers and industry and educating them on our learnings. But we really have an international presence today in getting out. Buddhi mentioned our eFields program. This is our book. We publish a book every year that gets passed out to farmers. That highlights all of our research, and that book's about 250 pages. And again, it annually summarizes our research more specifically to farmers, communicating to them. So this is our 4th publication. We started in 2017, but our eFields is a program that we have all, I don't know, or say about 38 farmers that participate. We use their land and their farm to conduct replicated research, and then we compile that data and report that in this what you see a report here for them. So with that, that's kind of Ohio State a little bit about what we're doing. And as I mentioned, we've kind of converted ourselves and started talking about more about digital ag. And this is kind of how we, for everyone here, when we talk about digital agriculture, this is how we have organized it. We have precision agriculture. We're really living through precision agriculture here globally, but at the same time, we speak about precision livestock. We talk about controlled environment production today and the technology and abilities that we're trying to build there, not only here on Earth, but potentially, in space. A lot of on-farm research. We just did a study. What I would tell you is, for farmers that start to use precision ag technology, one of the things that 84% of them start to do on-farm research. So they begin to ask questions. They begin to do research of their own, or they may ask someone like myself or others on this call to learn with them. So a lot of on-farm research, and then ultimately is, if you got questions, I can talk through this, is what we got enterprise agriculture, which is a very comprehensive look at not only the farm operations, but where do we market products, and doing that all in software using data. So it really takes the front end of all this and combines it all in this enterprise agriculture. And so comprehensively, we talk about digital agriculture. And one of my first points here today is why we're really focused on precision agriculture, especially within our Society of Precision Agriculture and what we've been doing for 25 plus years. Agriculture is going through a transition globally as well, and digitizing agriculture. Okay, and so we use the term digital agriculture to describe not only some of the technologies, the precision ag technologies, but really this new area of data analytics and software, and using cloud and cloud technology and IoT, and doing more what we call digitizing agriculture, and that's become what we describe as digital agriculture today. With that, just wanted to bring to your attention, if you have not seen, I think it was a group of about 38 people back in 2018 that the Society of Precision Agriculture went through and developed a definition. And so kind of, officially worldwide, this is the definition of precision agriculture that was developed, or we developed. You can find it out on the website using this URL right here. But precision agriculture is a management strategy that gathers, processes, and analyzes temporal, spatial, and individual data and combines it with other information to support management decisions according to estimated variability for improved resource use efficiency, productivity, quality, profitability, and sustainability of agriculture production. So a lot of words there, but as we look at some of this, we see that temporal, spatial, and this idea around data back down here to really drive advancing production agriculture. So we see that in terms of efficiency, productivity, quality, profitability, and now at least here in North and South America, we talk a lot about sustainability. So that's the official definition of precision agriculture. And again, I encourage you to kind of look at the website, to browse that, and part of the website has a page dedicated to that. Kind of where we were, and I'm assuming most of you know, I'm not going to do much history, but from a large scale, and when I say large scale, I'm really thinking North America, South America, and that's what I've been exposed to. The precision agriculture concept really kind of came about in the early 1990s. Really GPS in the US enabled what we thought about in terms of addressing spatial variability. And I think when you look at the research, when you go back in the 1990s and the 2000 areas, we really saw a tremendous volume of research focused on spatial variability in crop production. How do we take a field here, break it up, and manage it differently? Today, I would argue with you that I think we're really starting to think about profitability and efficiency as terms that we think more about than just spatial variability and managing spatial variability. What makes the farmer profitable? What makes them more efficient? Back in the 1990s, we really saw an advancement in guidance for machinery. We saw a lot of variable rate technology come out, so we could variable rate fertilizer and things like lime and even seed, but variable rate technology was a hot term, and you saw companies bringing technology forward that farmers could buy. And the other thing that we really saw a lot of was what this concept of precision soil sampling. So I would go in and either grid or zone fields and then sample within a grid or zone and begin to do variable rate fertilizer from that. And that's really what the 90s really emphasized, was kind of the guidance, variable rate, and precision soil sampling. Today, and this is just one of many companies' representation of this whole idea about digital agriculture. But at least as I travel internationally, I don't know a company that doesn't have something like this as an illustration. But really what we're looking at today, whether it's a large farm to even small farms, it's the connecting the farm. It's connecting the farmer, connecting the fields. In most cases, we're connecting these people or the land to the internet. Okay, and so IoT is used a lot, but we're connecting the people, we're connecting machinery, we're connecting the field using sensors, and then there's other things. But we see a lot of mobile applications. I'll talk about that here in a minute. But today, if I wanted to spend money, and I don't want to say that all this is cheap for people, but I can connect my farm and on my smartphone here today, watch what goes on my farm, whether that's people or whether that's machinery. But this is where we're headed, in my opinion. We think about not only the technology and the hardware, but we think about the data, and now we're thinking analytics to process that data and bring new information back, not only to the farm, but the companies. And so I'm not saying we're here yet, but this is kind of where we're heading to in the future. And when I see investments in, we'll say, precision agriculture, top $6 billion annually, this is what you see a lot of investment in, is making parts of this reality out there. And so again, this is digital agriculture. This is connected farm. And to me, whether it's a large production farm, we'll say 10,000 hectares to to a 1 hectare farm, you see bits and pieces of this starting to come in, and I'll touch on that here in a minute. Today, just to highlight, again, as you travel, we got guidance technology, we have yield monitors on combines and cotton harvesters and other harvesting equipment that measures the yield and tags it with GPS or GNSS locations. We have variable rate technology on about all equipment, at least of large equipment that comes out. We got auto section control. We got crop sensors available to farmers. Remote sense imagery is basically a commodity, at least here in North America. Farmers have access to it fairly cheaply, if not free a lot of times. And then we have the smartphones and the iPads and tablets. I would tell you here in North America, over 90% of the farmers carry a smartphone or an iPad or tablet, regardless of age. And so these are really influencing how farming's done, and more importantly, how business is done as it relates to a farmer. And then lastly, telematics or wireless connection. It's taking a machine like this and connecting it to the internet, and we see data being flowed off of that machine, to data coming to that machine, to someone like me being able to sit in my office and watch that machine through a mobile application. So these are just many of the technologies that we see today. A lot of these technologies, as you look at machinery around the world, are starting to become standardized, meaning they are somewhat, even starting in small tractors, for example, today, you're starting to see these technologies be embedded. So they're there, and can be utilized by farmers regardless of size today. Last thing on kind of large scale production, but this is what large farm operations see today. We have a tractor. This is a planter. Okay, and this planter is going about 15 kilometers per hour when I took this picture. But there's all kinds of technology on the planter. There's technology in the cab. And again, I can use my app to look at both the tractor and the planter as it plants, and sit here in my office and do that. So I just, this is kind of where we're at. Both the tractor and the planter connected to the internet. And again, we have a tremendous volume of technology. I'm going to say this planter has over 200 sensors on it just to make it operate today. And so that's kind of for large scale. This is what we would see in North America, South America, Australia, a little bit in Europe. You'll see something like this, and some in like Ukraine, Russia, some of those countries, you'll see some of these larger equipment running. But all kinds of technology to operate. This gentleman right here, Andrew, is not driving the tractor. Okay, he's just sitting up there monitoring both the planter and the tractor, and really the only thing he does is make sure everything's running okay. And so other than that, the tractor and the planter does everything else, okay, including drive itself here in the fields. So, but precision ag is much more. And I look at what the international society's doing, and meeting folks like some of the folks on this call today or webinar today, getting an opportunity to meet you and talk about what's happening either in your country and other countries that are adjacent. Precision agriculture is much more. For today, I just, really is improvement of farming. Using new technologies and practices, but it really is trying to improve efficiencies at the farm, making the farmers more money, improving the quality of life. Okay. And at the end of this, what's unique to me, when I go to Africa versus I go to Asia versus I go to Europe versus I go to North America, what we really see is technology, precision ag being used, being developed, being researched, and solutions to really address local or site-specific needs. And so I get a question constantly, is like, well, who's most advanced in the world? And my opinion is everyone's advancing, and it depends on how you define advancing. But precision agriculture is just being used in different ways. For example, in Africa and Tanzania, we've been doing a project there, and all of our farmers carry a smartphone like I got here today okay, an iPhone or a Droid, and have internet access wherever they are in their country. And we just build apps, and farmers are using apps now to water crops and to manage crops. Okay, and in the US, sure, we have farmers using the same phones, but I would tell you is they're not using apps as effectively as what we see like in an African country of Tanzania, where they're really seeing they got good connectivity, and farmers are able to really utilize things like smartphones and mobile applications to improve the operation. And it really helps with water efficiency, it helps with nutrient efficiency, things like that. But it's just way different technologies are going to be valued locally or site specifically as you move around. So that, to me, precision ag is really addressing all these, but in particular that last one of really site specific local needs, and it's going to be different for everyone as you move around. Here's some examples. Again, I'm using some of our African colleagues and stuff, but the improving quality of life. We have hand planter here. Rather than using manual, have a bag and bending over all day. Basically, you can use a hand planter and be more vertical. It's a lot more improvement on the quality of life. Here's another planter actually being pushed, or in some cases being pulled. But again, it's a different way of getting the person here more vertical, whether it's a male or female. Okay, and we see both of these both in planting and fertilization of crops, mainly is what in my experience has been going on in Africa. So, but it's really an improvement in the quality of life, new technology, better placement, improved production for these farmers, much more efficient in what they're using out there. So this is just an example of improvement of quality of life. More globally, and again, I'm not going to be able to go into everything today. I'm just going to pick 3 things that I see as I travel. I think these are becoming very important regardless of where you are in the world. But automation is here. Automation, and I'm assuming if I learn more about Sri Lanka, is probably there. But just going to some of the Asian countries here recently, I see some of this operating, but we see soil, sensors being put out in fields to inform farmers. We see robotics, okay? We see drones being used for various things out there, what we call scouting, and I'll go through that. But down here on the bottom, we see all kinds of different types of robotics as you move around the world. And the thing about these robotics I want to emphasize is they're very scalable. Okay, what we're noticing in robotics is we're not getting bigger necessarily, we're getting smaller in terms of the equipment, and maybe that parallels what opportunities rest in Sri Lanka. Okay, a lot of Asian countries still use a lot of smaller equipment, and they're positioned very well to take advantage of some of this automation that's becoming available globally. I'm not saying it's cheap today, but it's coming and it's commercially available. So drones are becoming pretty big. Mobile application and robotics. Let's go through that. It's just for drones. We're doing quite a bit of work here at Ohio State, and you see in the US, but really it's being eyes on the crops, scouting crops. We can count plants today. We can identify weeds. We can identify insects and disease in these crops. We have drones today, again, very commercially and economically, that can spray. Here's a drone sprayer down here on the right. And we also have drones, at least here, being tested to deliver packages to farms. So as you order something, rather than someone driving out to a farm, they're actually using drones to deliver. And there's a lot of other things. But in terms of, my point is, all of a sudden we're seeing a lot of drones, and drones being used more within farming and crop production for various reasons. But scouting and spraying being 2 here in the US that we see quite a bit of, or starting to see of. Here's an example, again, just Taranis is actually from Israel, a company, but they fly about, I'm going to say about 15 meters high over the crop. And you can see they can identify insects, disease, weeds, nutrient deficiencies. They can count, stand count, all based on imagery and artificial intelligence. Okay, and Tranis is, there's many other companies out there, but this is just one example that just used as for today. But here we are, drones, flying crops, and doing all these things right here, and doing it fairly accurately. And so all of a sudden we're starting to see a few companies starting to use these in North America to do their scouting. So they're removing people out of the field and they're replacing them with drones that gives a lot more data, a lot more accurate data, okay, and a lot more detail to what, and then they have an expert agronomist that oversees this to make sure what is being interpreted is correct. Some work here at Ohio State. We're crop scouting. We're really working on corn and soybeans. Those are our two primary crops, and we're looking at crop disease and nutrient deficiency. What you see here is soybeans. Here's a healthy plant, but you see a few other diseases. Here's our drone. You see it's got a tether, about 2-meter tether, and it's got 5 sensors or 5 cameras at the bottom. We're using some artificial intelligence, end of cloud computing, to identify disease and nutrient deficiency. The unique thing that we're doing is we're not just looking from above. We actually fly and put the cameras into the canopy and look at the base, if not the plants themselves underneath the canopy, and being a lot more effective and more proactive in identifying these diseases in corn and soybeans. And we're getting about 90 to 96% confidence in our system. And so from a research perspective, I would tell you is I think we've proved this out. But the uniqueness here is how we're handling the computing, but to actually dropping sensors down in the crop to look at, to get a little bit more intel or insight on are there diseases and is there deficiencies that could be addressed by the farmer. So drones are here, mobile applications are here. Okay, I won't go into all this. I've already talked about some of this, but I think we're seeing mobile applications regardless of where we live in the world, as long as you have internet, cellular connectivity. We see iPads, we see smartphones, and we see mobile applications worldwide starting to be used by farmers and others in the industry. So they're growing very rapidly, and most likely I would assume you probably have some in Sri Lanka as well. Robotics, these are just pictures from around the world. You know, my comment here is several of these you could go buy today. They're not cheap, but commercially available. Okay, and so we're getting there, but the availability is here, and you're starting to see certain parts of the world and certain crops starting to take advantage of them with certain labor shortages. Here's an example of John Deere. I just use them as a large company, as a company. But again, one thing I point out in this image is when I think of John Deere, I think big equipment. But when you look at their autonomous suite, look how much smaller their equipment. And so that goes to my point. When we go to robotics, I think we're going to begin to start to talk about smaller horsepower machinery, smaller machinery, but you're going to use multiple machines possibly to cover. But you see their spray drone up here. Here's their autonomous tractor. And actually this is their autonomous ground sprayer right here that they had. So again, these aren't commercially available, but you can go to farm shows and see them. My emphasis here is, look, even John Deere being a large company, thinking small in terms of how the robotic portfolio is going to look. An example, and again, this is one example of several we could use globally, but this is a company called Sabanto. They provide custom, they come to farmers and they actually put multiple machines out and plant. I can buy this service today in Ohio, here in the US. And they not only plant, but they could do some tillage for me. But again, it's a different thought here in North America. Rather than big equipment, we're using smaller equipment. We're using multiple machines out there to do some of these. And here's a company, it's a startup company here in central US that actually is providing this services if farmers want to pay, and we have some farmers starting to pay for it. So we're getting there. Again, just kind of my message here is going smaller. We're starting to see options crop up and be commercially available. CNH, for example, is partnered, and this was published. And again, I think it will influence folks even in your area of the world. but their partnership with Monarch and Augmenta, basically it's about automation, it's about electric tractors and machinery, but partnering with them to look at new and future solutions. And so that brings me to this. I think about the future. I'm not sure maybe where you are in Sri Lanka. And again, this is more of a western of North America. We're starting to see electric vehicles. We see delivery. UPS is a big company here. We see over-the-road trucks, and we now see pickups and cars, of course, that we can go that are all electric. They're all electric, and I see farming converting itself to being electric in terms of machinery out there today. So with that, I'll close up and I'll pass it back. But I just want to, kind of put a plug in here. If you haven't looked at and keep up with, I encourage you to check out the International Society of Precision Agriculture. Right here's the URL. If you're not a member, I encourage you to become a member. We have conferences all over the world, okay, that we support. It's a great society. It's growing, not only in membership, but it's great to talk about some of these new technologies and how do we integrate that into both our journal. We have the Precision Ag Journal, and if you haven't published in that, I encourage you to think about the Precision Ag Journal. But it's just a nonprofit professional society, really international in what we do to focus on precision agriculture / digital agriculture. And as I mentioned, we support conferences around the world and always enjoy participating in those to network and communicate with others out and seeing what good research they're doing in their part of the world. So with that, my quick summary is my take home today is really agriculture globally is going through this digital transformation. Of course, precision agriculture is a key component of that. But I do think, and what we want to emphasize is precision agriculture provides local solutions to enhance production. And what works here in the U.S. may not work for folks in Sri Lanka, and we recognize that. But we look at new technologies and new practices that really enhance production, and that's really where we're heading with all this precision agriculture. With that, again, I really appreciate the opportunity to be with everyone here tonight and visiting, and look forward to continued discussion. And hopefully you found a little bit of insight into my comments. And again, I look forward to questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor John Fulton. Thank you very much for providing some very useful information and the excellent presentation as well. For those who joined little late, let me tell you that we are at the 6th iPURSE pre-conference webinar on the title Precision Agriculture, Global Status and Prospects for Developing Countries. Our first speaker was Professor John Fulton. One important thing that I listened when I listened to him, one important statement went into my mind, deeply into my heart as well, that precision agriculture technology improve quality of life. That's a very important statement that you made, Professor Fulton. I think I know that there's a Q&A session at the end, but there are a few questions. I think it's high time that you answer those questions before moving further. So let me pose those questions to you at this stage. Udeni Devasinghe has 2 questions to you. So let me pose the first question first. At what extent these precision agricultural technologies can be adopted when size of the farm extents are small? Over to you, Professor Fulton, with your experience running around the world.
So I think the question is to what extent that precision agriculture can be adopted regardless of size of farms.
Exactly, yes.
So I think probably the question really hones in on small farmers. I'm going to use a hectare, 2 hectares, or possibly smaller. As I see, number one, those real small farmers having access to mechanization. Okay, and I think you probably see that. But with mechanization and even with the new equipment comes the opportunity to have possibly some of the technology already on the machines. So for example, the tractor may have guidance today, though it's a very small tractor. and companies worldwide are beginning to provide that. And so for the small, I think understanding the production system, understanding your local conditions and measuring that, that's where I think these mobile applications, as I travel, are becoming more important. And so when I think about, at least, and I'm just using it as an example, kind of being recently in India, you're starting to see farmers use smartphones to get information and use locally there within their operation, and they may be farming only 1 hectare, and so that's their in to managing nitrogen, for example, managing water, okay, improving both of those, the management of both, as an example, versus either doing that because that's what I've done before. What we're trying to transition that to is being more informed in what you're doing, even for the small. And then the other piece of that is the quality of life. At least that's been my experience, is through the mechanization, really thinking about having solutions that deal with that small landowner and farmer and the people that help, but thinking about what, I use the planter is, rather than having to bend over all day to plant or place fertilizer, we can now be more in a comfortable position, do it more in the same hours, if not less. We're probably more efficient. So we're doing the same thing, less time, but at the same time, making it much more healthier for the person doing it. And I think that's very important.
There's one more. Earlier, I thought of posting you a question raised by the same person, but then there's a related question coming up, John. Let me put forward that first. What will be the cost in terms of US dollars in adopting high-tech precision agriculture in a small farm for about 5 to 10 hectares?
Yeah, 5 to 10 hectares. Again, that's a really good question, and kind of tough to answer. But if you're 5 to 10 hectares and you're wanting some technology to use, I think you can be in for anything and be pretty good technology from $500 to $2,000 US. You can have some basic technology that could probably be adopted and used to help the operation.
Okay, one more question. Well, again, by Udaya Devasinghe, I think she's from Rajarata University, another university. What is your opinion on requirement of government involvement in adopting precision agricultural technologies? So it's a state intervention that the member is talking about. What is the level of involvement of state intervention do you think should be there in adopting precision agriculture?
And is that asking for the United States, or are we talking?
Not precise, but maybe in your general opinion.
Yeah.
Take
well,
USA, for example, and another country from developing nation.
So to me, I think it becomes very important that people have access to the internet. And I can't speak to Sri Lanka, but I can tell you in the US and many countries I go to, when you go to the rural areas where farming occurs, a lot of times access to internet can be very limited. And I think that's a disadvantage for those people, those farmers in those areas. So I think I use the government as an example. That's where government needs to help, whether that's a government plus industry or private companies helping, but where the government needs to come and help provide internet access, whether that's a cellular access to whatever. So that's an example where I think the government, for us, and I think even worldwide, one other area that the governments have been really helping is with things like GPS or GLONASS, these navigational tools that gives us the ability to pinpoint our position on Earth. And so governments, most likely, in most cases, governments have put those satellites and those systems in orbit. They manage those systems and maintenance them and allow us as civilians, regardless if it's a US or Sri Lanka, access to be able to use a receiver to pinpoint our location. And so governments have been active to provide that to all of us. And so internet access, I think that and I think I will make this statement for all of you, is I think governments are going to have to be involved in data privacy. Data privacy. You know, I talked about a lot of mobile applications, and behind some of those mobile applications is data, and that includes your personal data, Buddhi. So I might put my name in there, and they know where I live, for example, and that can be used to market, and there can be some positives to that. But they can also use that data and maybe provide that to other people. And we need to have the governments involved, in my opinion, as it relates to data privacy, because is it fair if I have all your information and you don't know it? That's probably not a fair situation. And so I think governments will have to be involved in that as well.
Questions are flowing in, John, but let me ask you one more. There are two quick questions. I think that would do. That one question from Dr. Rupa Sena says that, what is the percentage of, I mean, he's talking about the extent of precision agriculture in Ohio State. That's one thing. Let me continue with that. And then what is the return on investment for 1 hectare of rice farming under precision agriculture? Yeah, what do you?
Yeah, the second question is very good. That's a good question. Percentage of precision ag in Ohio State. Well, I would tell you we're probably 70 to 80% of our farmers are using guidance today. It's very accessible, and as I said, it's already built into the machine, so it's there to use by the farmers. We see somewhere, depending on especially fertilizer, that 60% of the hectares in Ohio get fertilizer, variable rate fertilizer. And so, but we don't have any crop sensors. We're starting to see telematics or internet connection with the equipment become popular. And so it kind of depends on the technology, but I would tell you is we've got a pretty good, over 50%, if not 60+% of our farmers have some kind of precision technology that they're using on their farm. And let's not forget, again, I keep going back to my phone and holding it up, that over 90, I would say 96% of our farmers have something like this that they're doing business with. So I think that's part of precision technology as well.
Okay. One last question. I mean, there are many questions coming up, John, but one last question. This is regarding the International Society of Precision Agriculture that you mentioned. And Professor Pradeepa Silva wants to know, can the undergraduates become members of the International Society of Precision Agriculture?
Yes, they can become members. So faculty, professionals, students, and for students, there's a reduced rate as well. We really encourage students to become members. I would highlight for the students out there that every other year we give out student awards at one of the conferences. And so being a member and having faculty that you know are being members, it gives you really good access to not only go to some of these conferences, but we also give student awards and want to recognize the good work that our students are doing around the world in terms of research.
Okay, I will keep some of the questions in store, John, because I have to run a QA session as well at the end. So thank you very much for the presentation, and be with us until the Q&A session. So let me move on to the next presenter right now. We had John talking to us from USA. Our next presenter is from Sri Lanka, from the very faculty that we are in, from Department of Soil Science, Faculty of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya. He is Professor W.A.U. Vitharana. Professor Vitharana graduated from Faculty of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya in 1998. Later, he joined the faculty as an academic staff member and possesses 17 years of teaching and research experience as a lecturer to senior lecturer at the Department of Soil Science of the same faculty. He obtained his MSc and PhD from Ghent University, Belgium, on the soil spatial inventory technique in support of site-specific soil management, something that is very important in the present-day context. Presently, his research activities are focused on the application of pedometric techniques for soil mapping, spatial characterization for soil properties, and sustainable land use planning and management, and site-specific plant nutrient management. He's a Tier 4 researcher from the scale of Tier 1 to Tier 4, which is a ranking that has been established by the UGC to recognize the researchers, especially academia, in terms of their research achievement. And he teaches undergraduate and postgraduate courses on digital soil mapping, soil survey, and classification, including land use planning, environmental soil physics, plant nutrition, and also introductory courses on soil sand. Without much ado, let me now invite our colleague, Professor W.A.U. Vitharana, to make his presentation. Over to you, Vitharana.
Thank you very much, sir, for a very nice introduction. I'm really glad to hear the presentation of Professor Fulton. So actually, he laid a very good foundation for me to talk about potential precision agricultural technologies for Sri Lanka. So the content of my presentation is, firstly, I'm going to introduce the precision agriculture, focusing on the land use in developing countries. So then I'm going to discuss a few selected potential precision agricultural technologies suitable for Sri Lanka. Then finally, a few words about way forward in adopting the precision agricultural technologies in Sri Lanka. First, I thought of giving a brief introduction about precision agriculture. So precision agriculture technologies and practices intend to address crop and soil spatial as well as temporal variability to achieve production targets in agriculture, environment, as well as economic benefits. So if you look at the photograph I have shown on my left-hand side, so this is a photograph of a paddy tract of Sri Lanka. To the outside, you don't see any difference within this paddy tract. But if we observe the soil variability, the differences of soils within this paddy tract, as I have shown in my right-hand side, so there's a lot of differences within this paddy tract in terms of the soil. So in precision agriculture, we are trying to address these differences or the variability and target our management practices. It could be fertilizer application or water management, etc., to optimize the production while getting environment as well as economic benefits. We are very familiar with the 4R concept, 4R nutrient stewardship concept. There we focus about choosing right source of nutrient, at applying it at right rate, and applying it at right time, at right place to achieve production benefits in agriculture. This is related to nutrient application, plant nutrient application. But in precision agriculture, I would say it is an extension of this concept where we apply this 4R concept to all aspects of crop management. And the involvement of modern information technology is one of the key aspects of precision agriculture. They are often, we use sensors and remote sensing, we use positioning systems and geomapping and integrated electronic communications, as well as variable rate technology, as well as automated steering systems in some cases, when we apply precision agriculture. So why we should talk about precision agriculture separately in agricultural systems in developing countries as well as developed countries? So if we consider developed countries, we often observe very large agricultural fields. In USA, the average size of an agricultural field is nearly 200 hectares. So mostly in these large agricultural fields, large-scale mechanization is practiced. And also this agriculture is capital-intensive farming. There's a lot of capital investments pertaining to the agricultural activities in developed countries. Not only that, in terms of farmers, farmers are ready to, most of the farmers, majority of farmers are ready to embrace new technologies. So therefore, these precision agricultural technologies, what we observe today mostly, have been developed for large-scale applications. But if we consider developing countries, we know, if you consider Sri Lanka, small-scale agriculture is practiced in small fragmented land holdings. And also, in terms of capital investment, it is less capital intensive. And majority of farmers are unaware about awareness, the level of awareness of majority of farmers about the technological advances is pretty low. And also they are not really ready to embrace new information technology for their agricultural practices. So in terms of the field size, as far as we know, more than 45% of the agricultural fields in Sri Lanka is used for paddy cultivation. Out of that, 70% of these fields are having an average field size of less than 0.8 hectares. So in terms of field size and the farmer awareness, the scenarios in developing countries and developed countries are different. So I think it's better to look at the precision agriculture cycle before talking about appropriate technologies suitable for developing countries. The first step of precision agriculture is crop and soil monitoring. By doing crop and soil monitoring, it allows us to understand the spatial as well as temporal variability of agricultural fields. For that, there are numerous sensors are available. Proximal soil sensors and drone-based remote sensors, soil moisture sensors, etc. Not only that, even we can use precise soil sampling for crop as well as soil monitoring, especially for soil monitoring. The second step of precision agriculture is attribute mapping. So let's see what is attribute mapping. So when we use sensors or any other means to obtain soil information or crop information, those information are mostly discrete, right? So therefore, just like these points, you can see these points show the electrical conductivity measurements. Those have been taken in a particular agricultural field. To use this information for agricultural practices, we have to convert these point information to maps, right? So therefore, attribute mapping is a very important step in precision agriculture. So there are GIS software like ArcGIS, those are subscription-based software, and also open source software like QGIS, R, can be used for this attribute mapping process. So there are not only that, there are a lot of developments in spatial statistics, mainly geostatistical methods, artificial intelligence based methods. Those can be used for attribute mapping. So in developing countries, even the knowledge and know-how about using this spatial data analysis techniques is very good. So even students in undergraduate level and postgraduate level, they study about this attribute mapping or GIS-based spatial mapping techniques. The third step of precision agriculture is the use of decision support tools. Here what we are going to do, we convert crop and soil information collected in previous two steps and convert this information for management decisions. So management decisions are taken by using these decision support systems. Simply these decision support systems are computer or tablet based programs, but country specific or agriculture system specific decision support system building up, very important. So the final step is, once we have the decision, the final step is site specific management of crop inputs. So let's talk a little bit more about this site specific management. There are two main approaches for site specific management. The first approach is called as sensor based variable rate application. I have a small video for you to show how this sensor based variable rate application is practiced. So you can see in this farm machinery, a sensor is attached or fixed. That sensor measures the variability of the crop on the go while this machinery, farm equipment is moving. So based on this information, the computer system within the machinery regulate the application rate of, in this case, fertilizer. You can see the fertilizer rate changes continuously, and according to that, relevant fertilizer amount is applied. But the problem of this technique is sensor-based variable rate application is our field sizes available in developing countries are not large enough to use these kind of machines. And also our agriculture is not mechanized as such. So with that knowledge, we can move into the next approach. Excuse me. The next approach is called as map-based variable rate application. What we are doing here, we use detailed maps. It could be crop or soil maps, and we use these maps to develop site-specific prescription maps. For that, we can use decision support systems. So this information is fed to the variable rate application device, right? It's a farm machinery. So then this computer system in this machine, right, farming equipment, controls the nutrient application using this variable rate applicator on the go. This whole process needs georeferencing or location information. So in terms of farm machinery requirement, field sizes in Sri Lanka, this approach is also not a very applicable for our countries, especially the developing countries. So with that information, we can move to the next approach of site-specific management. Here also, we are using mapped data or information layers about crops, soils, etc., and use this data, and we process this data and identify management zones. Management zones, or here in this map, you can see 3 management zones. In red color, 1 management zone. In each management zone, 1 rate of management application is practiced. So let's assume in terms of phosphorus application, 1 rate of phosphorus application is practiced in this management zone given in blue color, and another rate is applied in the management zone that is shown in the green color, etc. So this kind of precision agriculture is applicable for our country. Then manual labor can be used for this type of site-specific management. So I believe in our part of the world, this is the best site-specific management practice that coming under the precision agriculture. So we can talk a little bit about the different sensors. Those are suitable for our conditions. Proximal soil sensing is a very potential precision agriculture technology for countries like Sri Lanka. So these proximal soil sensors, as I have shown 1 sensor here, those sensors are operated very close to the soil surface. Using this equipment, we can obtain measurements on the go. That means while the machine, the sensor is pulled on the soil surface, this measurements are georeference. That means the location information is also tagged. And these measurements are finally fed to a computer system. And we can easily produce maps using this sensor obtained information. Electromagnetic induction based conductivity sensor is one of such proximal soil sensor that is widely used in the world, as well as we have tested in Sri Lanka. Here I have shown dual EM 1S soil sensor. I'm going to show you a small video to show how this equipment, soil sensor, is operated on ground. So you can see this sensor is pulled on the soil surface. While this sensor is pulled, it measures the electrical conductivity. These measurements are georeference. That means location information is tagged and fed to this computer. At the end of this soil survey, we can download this information and create maps to understand the spatial variability. So this electromagnetic induction based conductivity sensor measures the conductivity of the surface soil as well as the conductivity of the subsurface soil. Most important part of this information is this measured electrical conductivity provides information about other soil properties such as soil texture, organic carbon content, about compacted soil layers, soil moisture content, and soil salinity. So basically, once we do a proximal soil sensing campaign or soil survey, at the end of the day, we will get this kind of map. Right? So based on this map, we can target our soil sampling and we can take limited number of soil samples. Then we can calibrate a model to predict other soil properties from electrical conductivity, what we measure using the proximal soil sensor. So in this example, we have predicted the depth to the plow layer using electrical conductivity sensor. So you can see the differences. The depths are different at different parts of this field. So you can use that information for management decisions. So to explain this further, I would like to give you information about one of the research we have conducted. So this research was conducted in Kurunagal of Sri Lanka on a paddy tract, so that you can see it here. So using this sensor, we were able to obtain soil electrical conductivity measurements. This is the map of that electrical conductivity measurements. So based on these electrical conductivity measurements, we were able to produce a very detailed soil texture map. So based on this soil texture, we were able to identify two management zones. Management zone 1 in red color and the management zone 2 in green color. So this shows the boundaries of management zones we have identified for this tract. So in red color, one management zone. In yellow color lines, another management zone is shown. So you can see that each management zone consists of number of small paddy fields. So that means this set of paddy fields can be managed uniformly than another set of paddy fields in this management zone 2, as you can see it here. So by applying different rates of fertilizers, one rate to this area, another rate to this area, so this management zone, we can optimize our input use. So to further on that, we observed large differences of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, as well as sulfur contents between these management soils. Not only that, we have used proximal soil sensing to identify the soil salinity management zones. In these two maps, I have shown salinity management zones identified for the Anuradhapura district. So we observed even we can achieve 5% yield increment by choosing the correct variety suitable for the salinity level at each management zone. Another important technology in precision agriculture is decision support systems. So as I said earlier, decision support systems convert spatial information about soils and crops to management decisions. So decision support systems such as Nutrient Expert, this system was developed by International Plant Nutrition Institute, can be used for site-specific nutrient management. Basically, they have developed this Nutrient Expert tool for number of cereal crops, including wheat as well as paddy. So in this particular exercise, what we did during last few years, we tried to calibrate the Nutrient Expert to local paddy growing environments. So this is the structure of this Nutrient Expert decision support tool. So in the center, we have the decision support tool. For that, we need to insert or feed number of soil, crop, and management as well as climate. Not only that, water availability data. Let's say in our case for each management soil. Then this Nutrient Expert tool that is installed in the computer or in the tab. So it works based on models, crop models, water flow models, etc. It provides nutrient recommendation or fertilizer recommendation for each management soil. So then we can use this fertilizer recommendation when we manage soil nutrients for each management soil. So for each management soil, one fertilizer recommendation based on this Nutrient Expert decision support tool. So we did a number of studies. We selected around 36 fields and tested this decision support tool system to find out how much of fertilizer we can save using this decision support system. As you can see, out of these 36 sites, 14% of sites we were able to save 10 to 20 kilograms of triple superphosphate fertilizer. So likewise, in 39% of the fields, we were able to save 5 kilograms per hectare of triple superphosphate. So in terms of muriate of potash, the information was pretty different. So out of 70% of the fields, we were able to save 10 to 40 kilograms of muriate of potash per hectare. So this is a great advantage. We can reduce the fertilizer usage and minimize environmental problems by using decision support systems, right, coupled with soil crop information, those are site specific, coming from this management zones. How about the yield? What we found, quite a large, considerable yield increment by applying fertilizers at site-specific way, based on site-specific requirement. And we found that around 28,000 rupees can be saved per hectare by adopting site-specific nutrient management. So another very important technology that is applicable for Sri Lankan condition is the use of agricultural drones. So these agricultural drones have become a very affordable technology, and using these drones, we can obtain multispectral images showing the canopy reflectance in different wavelengths, red, green, blue, near infrared, etc. This sensor attached to the drone can be used to find out, to take pictures of the reflections of red wavelength, green wavelength, infrared wavelength, etc. So using these separate images, we can develop spectral indices. Those spectral indices are very good indicators of crop health. So most commonly used such a spectral index is NDVI, commonly known as Normalized Difference Vegetation Index. To calculate NDVI, we use near infrared as well as red reflections from the vegetation, as you can see here, healthy crop reflects more near-infrared waves. So therefore, high values of NDVI can be obtained in a crop field that is growing at very good health. So that means crop health is reflected by those images we can take using drones, and subsequently by calculating this normalized difference vegetation index. So these agricultural drones have a lot of advantages as well as applications in our context. So it shows a bird's eye view of the status of the crop in a very short time, and process this information using a suitable software and have a bird's eye view of the crop performances. And also plant stress conditions can also be identified before the human eye would be able to detect these plant stress conditions. And also farmers can take quick decisions by identifying disease affected areas, especially fungal attacks, pest attacks, water stress conditions. Those are visible in these images. So using this information, we can do site-specific weed management, site-specific disease control, etc., and optimize the site-specific management of crops, especially the paddy crop. So the one of the main advantages, these images when taken from the drone are automatically georeferenced. That means location information is also recorded. So this information can be coupled with another drone where it has a spraying capacity. So not only that, the drones can be used to take pictures, especially pictures showing the NDVI-like reflectance behaviors can be used to predict the yields of crops. So we can calculate the productivity or productions expected in paddy tracts, etc., by using this technology. So this is a simple example showing how the white mold disease can be detected using a drone. So this is a NDVI image, right? It's taken using a drone, and this is, you can see these red color patches show the lower NDVI values. That means stressed areas, right? So that reflect the need of flying the fungicide for this area. So remember, once we take these pictures, right, using the drone, then we develop the NDVI-like indices to see the plant performances. So always we need to go back to the field and interpret these images and take actions appropriately. So this shows that how we can use this spray drones to target the fungicide application based on NDVI image captured using the drone. So there's a huge potential to use this drone technology and image capture to optimize the top pressing of nitrogen application for paddy. So, but in that case, the development of appropriate decision support systems is very important, as well as on-site calibration. Those are very required. But we have a very good research base or research experiences on the use of leaf color chart to optimize the nitrogen application for paddy. So we can use that knowledge and develop this decision support systems for nitrogen applications for paddy based on the drone images. So not only drones, so we can obtain crop reflectance information using this handheld canopy reflectance sensors. We can also calculate or reduce the normalized difference vegetation index like indices and optimize nitrogen fertilizer application based on that. For that, we don't have to use a drone. We can manually use this handheld canopy reflectance sensors and find out the fertilizer requirements, especially the top dressings. So there are some research evidences, significantly less nitrogen requirement if we use this technology to decide the nitrogen requirement at the panicle initiation stage. Oh, another potential technology available for countries like Sri Lanka is by using soil moisture sensor guided irrigation systems. So for that we need soil moisture sensors. These soil moisture sensors have to be installed in the field. So if we can install them in management zones, that can give us more reliable information. Right? So these soil moisture sensors are now available in the market. And also there are sensors we can purchase separately and customize and develop the wireless smart transmission systems and use that information to couple with decision support systems and trigger irrigation. So this kind of comprehensive, complete automated sensor-based irrigation systems are available. Yara company, they produce such a system. But not only that, we have the capacity in most institutes, right, to produce such sensor systems to suit for our soils as well as our crops. So there's a huge future for this kind of techniques. I think our university education system should change to give more knowledge about the fundamentals as well as applications for students to develop such systems customized for Sri Lanka. Another potential technology is laser leveling. So this laser leveling has shown very good benefits in terms of water usage as well as yield increase in paddy cultivations. So this laser leveling allows us to level the paddy lands precisely, allowing a uniform distribution of water and therefore giving extra benefits like weed control and uniform distribution of nutrients, etc. So I would like to show you one video to tell how this laser leveling process is worked.
An ideal way of leveling rice fields is through laser leveling. Laser leveling for rice is slowly emerging in some Southeast Asian countries, such as Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos PDR. With laser leveling, a laser transmitter placed at the side of the field sends a laser beam to a laser receiver, which is attached to a leveling bucket drawn by a tractor. The control panel or box mounted on the tractor interprets the signal from the receiver and opens or closes the hydraulic valve, which raises or lowers the bucket. The bucket then drags and drops soil across the field to make it even. The laser receiver signals the adjustments of the leveling bucket accordingly to ensure that the height distance between the soil and the laser signal stays the same, making the soil as leveled as possible. Laser leveling can be done in dry fields, thus saving valuable water for growing the crop. Farmers can do laser leveling during the dry season or when the crop has not grown yet.
Okay, we can move to the next slide. So I tried to develop a kind of potential precision agriculture model for paddy cultivation in Sri Lanka. So we can start from this end. So I think it's better to do proximal soil sensing and delineate management zones for paddy tracts of Sri Lanka. Then to represent the variability of the paddy tracts, we can analyze, that means nutrient contents in each management zone using field kits. So this is one of the field kit that has been calibrated in Sri Lanka. So it's very less cost. We can find out the properties like phosphorus, potassium, pH, like properties in paddy tracks or in management zones. So these, I think it's locally we have to produce. This is a field kit that is imported from India. I think as scientists we should try to develop such kits in Sri Lanka that is suitable for our conditions as well as our soils. So then we can use laser leveling to have precision leveling of paddy lands. Then the decision support based nutrient management can be done based on these measurements we take using this field kit. We can feed that soil information as well as other information, crop, farmer, the farmer information, then find out the most appropriate fertilizer recommendation for each management zone we identify here. So during the cropping cycle, we can use drone-based sensing to identify diseases as well as weed spreading, right, even at various early stages. Then we can optimize the nitrogen application, top dressings, by using handheld sensor as well as leaf color chart, precision water management practices as well using the relevant sensors, sensor technologies. At the end, we can do yield monitoring and fine tune this system, this cycle by season to the next season. So using such a technology, such a model, we can obtain higher yields for paddy, right, while reducing the environmental problems. So towards information-driven agricultural systems of Sri Lanka, what we need to do, so there's a very urgent need to develop agricultural spatial data platform for Sri Lanka. What is this platform? This is an online spatial platform. So in this platform, right, computer program like you can remember like Google Earth, right? So each land parcel boundaries of agricultural fields should be digitized and available. Not only that, weather data, soil information, farm management information, crops, fertilizer usage, production data, and other information like satellite images, NDVI, topography information, etc. could be made available. Not only that, we can integrate decision support tools within this system. Then if farmers know the nutrient levels as well as expected management practices is going to make in the coming season, he can obtain the relevant fertilizer recommendations. Not only that, even other site-specific models, let's say decision support systems for irrigation scheduling, etc., can be integrated to such an agricultural spatial data platform. So how the way forward in adopting precision agriculture in Sri Lanka? This is a list of activities I identified. The way forward in adopting precision agriculture in Sri Lanka. First, we have to do mainstreaming of precision agricultural technologies and practices appropriate for different crop sectors like plantation crops, paddy, etc. So there we have to consider the available technologies suitable for our country as well as potential technologies that we have to develop or customize. Then there's a need of change of policies and the way of supporting to fill research as well as administration gaps in introducing precision agricultural practices. So one example is we can have a fertilizer subsidy scheme driven by the precision agricultural technology based decisions. Then of course there's a huge need to restructure the ground staff, especially the extension officers. I think the graduates, those are coming from agricultural faculties, should be incorporated to the ground level staff of especially the extension officers level officers. And also it is very important to train the ground level officers by capacity building about the technologies relevant to precision agriculture, and also development of infrastructure. So especially it's better to have centrally available technical resources such as sensors, farm machineries, etc., because our individual farmers don't have much the capacity to purchase such equipment for their own and practice precision agriculture. So then the gradual introduction of precision agricultural practices to small farm community level is important, especially targeting young farmers, because this should be done gradually. You cannot convert entire agricultural system to precision agriculture based system in a season. It should be a gradual process by correctly identifying the most appropriate farmers or group of farmers. This technology should be given and practiced. Not only that, it's very important to develop agricultural spatial data platform, as I mentioned earlier, targeting specially integrated with decision support systems other information required for precision agriculture. Two other main aspects of the way forward is our undergraduate programs in agriculture should focus to introduce technology aspects in the mainstream subject areas, right? Especially GIS, spatial data handling, big data analysis, and spatial data analysis, as well as programming should be introduced to our curricula, agricultural curricula. And also agricultural farms of faculties need to be an avenue for introducing precision agriculture, both the technology as well as management. And also, once we adopt the precision agriculture at small scale, there's a very important aspect that we should continuously monitor the system, right, using the agricultural spatial data platform. Then we can make adjustments and optimize the system. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. I would like to acknowledge the research grants I got to do some of the research outputs I showed, especially the Belgian Development Corporation, National Science Foundation of Sri Lanka, National Research Council of Sri Lanka, also my research students and collaborators, as well as University of Peradeniya for giving all support. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Vitharana. Thank you very much for showing us a way ahead, way forward actually, and also bringing up some examples from the Sri Lankan scenario in application of precision agriculture. Well, while you are presenting, there were a few questions from colleagues, and John has already answered some of those questions, but let me repeat those things once again for the benefit of others. There was a question from Dr. Samana Daud who wanted to know the availability of miniature equipment which is suitable for small land agriculture practices, either in US or Israel. John responded saying that there are small robots and drones that are available and are cheap, and the technologies are small, as usual, as we know. And as he mentioned and showed, they're also seeing new companies test and develop small tractors and planters. Planting machines, of course. And there was a question from Mudita Perra, which also John answered earlier. The question was, what are the possibilities of practicing precision agriculture in developing countries like Sri Lanka? And John responded saying that there are several opportunities for developing countries to have access to precision agriculture technologies. And we also see there's more mobile applications that can be used to help farmers and others, plus seeing small equipment that has technology to help as well. So that was the responses given by John. John can add later to those, but let me put forward some questions to Professor Vitharana. There's a question from Nishanka Jayasiri, who asked, are there any methods to strengthen decision support systems under Sri Lankan context? What kind of interventions are possible? What are the entry points? Please be concise. Over to you, Professor Vitharana.
Okay, I think the decision support system development is very important, but the entry point would be to start from the available decision support systems, because these decision support systems are developed based on long-term research data. So like what we did for nutrient expert decision support system, we calibrated it for Sri Lankan conditions, right? So I think it's very important to start with some point where the already available decision support systems, then calibrate such decision support systems for the conditions suitable for Sri Lanka.
Okay, Shipa, I mean, the question also asked, I mean, there was a sub-question in that saying that what are the entry points for this process?
Entry points, so entry points, I mean, I think he has asked about the initial,
Probably yes.
And yeah, so that's what I said. I mean, entry points. So we have to identify really the management decision we require. So whether it is water management or the nutrient management, then we have to visit backward and find out whether there are decision support systems are developed. Right? If not, right, for such scenarios, we can develop our own decision support systems as well.
Yeah, John, would you have any additions to be made? Hope you heard the question earlier.
Yeah. I don't have any, excuse me, nothing to add to that.
Right. Okay, thank you. Well, Vita, there's another question from Mudita Pereira. Says, what are the possibilities of using precision agricultural practices in Sri Lanka to increase the production under current context?
Yeah, so I think in the current context, the productivity increment can be done by optimizing the input use. So in that case, as I explained in my presentation as well, optimal nutrient management is one of the very important aspects we have to consider. So in the most of the cases in Sri Lanka, the nutrient application is done based on blanket recommendations. So that's where I showed that the difference of the nutrient application that can be obtained, right, by comparing blanket recommendation and site-specific management-based recommendation. I think in terms of Sri Lanka, the first priority should be the site-specific nutrient management using applicable technologies. That is one of the main aspects. And also, as I said, the new technologies, sensors, can be used to monitor the soil moisture status of crops. Right? So there are some sensor systems are available in the market, as well as there are sensors, those can be customized to develop such sensor networks. Right? So the second point would be the optimizing the water usage in the country for the crop production. So as well as by optimizing the weedicide application, herbicide application practices, as well as disease control practices, we can cut down the cost to some extent, as well as protecting the environment. So I think the basic requirements should be the optimizing the nutrient management practices in different agricultural crops.
Well, questions are flowing in, Professor Vitharana, so we have to give short answers. I cannot cut short the questions in most of the cases, but I will do my best. There's a question from Professor Dayavansa to ask, what kind of interventions are there from vegetation on the ground when you are using these sensors to detect soil properties? You're talking about sensors, Professor Vitharana, right?
Yeah, I think the question is all about the I can show my slide again, the proximal soil sensor, right?
Probably,
so,
yes.
Yeah, basically I talked about proximal soil sensing, right? So this proximal soil sensor, what we discussed, right, can be used when the crop is there as well. As far as the soil is exposed and the sensor can be driven or pulled on the soil surface. But one of the consideration we have to make is the soil moisture content. Normally this sensor has to be optimally used when the soil is under the field capacity. So in terms of the usage, such soil sensors, but though I introduced one sensor here, there are many other sensors. Example, there are visible near infrared based soil sensors. There are gamma rays based soil sensors that can be used for potassium to assess the potassium content of the soil. The VIS-NIR sensor, visible near infrared sensors, as well as mid infrared sensors can be used to measure the large number of soil properties, right, without wet chemistry. But all these technologies actually can be applied when the crop is there. So, but only issue would be there should be a way to operate these sensors on the ground.
Okay, thanks. This is a quick question. We need quick answer by Chandima Kumuduni, who is asking a question from you, Professor Vitharana. Are there soil salinity maps for Sri Lanka?
Now, basically, soil salinity maps, there are no soil salinity maps. Right? So one of the idea I introduced, actually the sensor that what I introduced can be used to identify the within field variability of soil salinity. I think that is the way forward. Right? Rather than developing salinity maps for the entire country, the way forward is to develop salinity maps for most probable areas using such sensors in detailed manner. Then we can manage the salinity by identifying management zones and selecting optimal water management strategies as well as varieties. So there are no countrywide salinity maps available in Sri Lanka.
Okay, right. Thank you. Neil Vithanage asked a question from Professor Vitharana. Want to know what are the main soil properties that must be taken into consideration, essentially in GIS, remote sensing, integrated cropland suitability analysis? Just a quick answer, quick response.
Yeah, so land suitability analysis is a lengthy process. So it requires many soil properties. It ranges from soil properties like soil texture, depth, nutrient availability, water drainage conditions, etc. So we cannot identify one particular soil property that can be useful for land evaluation or land use planning. But here in this management zone based explanations, I try to emphasize that soil texture, sand, silt, clay contents, right, is one of the key variables that can be used to identify management zones within the field, because most of other soil properties are influenced by soil texture. So in terms of site-specific soil management point of view, soil texture is a very important soil variable has to be considered.
Thank you. Another question from Neil Vithanage. Again, a quick answer, a short answer is requested, Professor Vitharana. Is asking what is the ideal soil sampling method for GPS-aided manual soil survey?
So there's no ideal soil sampling method. So if we consider, let's assume that we don't have any sensor. But in my presentation, I highlight to say that if we can have the access of soil sensors, we can measure the soil variability using the sensor. Then we can guide soil sampling based on the soil information that coming out from the sensor. But if you don't have any such information, there are a lot of information available even for free about the topography of the field, right? So I think topography is one of the key variables we can consider to identify soil sampling locations when we need to characterize the soil variability.
Right. Okay, thank you. Dr. Amro Sirisean again posed a question to you, Ita. He want to know know that whether we can get the temporal variations of soil parameters using proximal sensors techniques that you explained a little while ago.
Yeah, so that is a very interesting question. So the sensor I was talking about, soil electrical conductivity sensor, it measures kind of very stable properties. Soil texture is a very stable property, right? But this dynamic variability can be captured by using drone technology. So I forgot to tell it in very detail. So if we can take images of the crop fields consequently for number of years, right? So we can see the temporal variability patterns of these fields as well. So the proximal soil sensor I was talking about was used basically to measure, to characterize the very stable property of the soil texture, right? As well as in that case salinity. So if it is dynamically changing this property, of course we have to resurvey the area. As an example for soil salinity, right? Soil salinity level will change with time. So we have to resurvey the area using the sensor if such a dynamic property is addressed by proximal soil sensing.
Right. Thank you, Vita. I'm going to turn now to John once again. John, the question is posed by one Sulochana Silva. The question is more focused on Sri Lankan condition, but I think you are in a better footing definitely to answer this. The question is that what are the challenges of using drone technology in Sri Lanka, in a country like Sri Lanka? Maybe John?
Yeah, if I could add on to the last question, I just want to highlight that there continues to be more proximal soil sensing sensors available worldwide. And so characterizing to his point, soil and doing it at a really high scale is becoming more feasible. So for example, here, we now see soil organic matter sensors that are on the go, very high resolution. I'm talking, we're collecting data within a half meter of each other. Very high resolution. But my point is, when you look at organic matter, some of those characteristics that should not change very drastically over time, so they don't change temporally, we can do a much better job of generating these maps as he presented in front of us. So there's more sensors that are coming, just to be aware of, and for the most part, that's driving the price down too, so making them more accessible to countries like Sri Lanka.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. John, there's a question, I think that is related to current situation in Sri Lanka as well. You may be knowing government of Sri Lanka has decided to ban importation of inorganic fertilizer, the chemical fertilizers as we call them, and pesticides. There's a question from Udeni Devasinghe, and also a similar question from Professor Jivika Vireva. Let me combine these things and say that what level of precision technologies, at what level precision technologies can be adopted if soil fertility is solely managed using organic inputs only?
Yeah, that's pretty tough, but we can do it. We may not have the yields that we normally find at first, talking about traditional fertilizer and pesticides, but we start to see robots. We're starting to see robots that do weeding, so they go through the crop and remove weeds, and so we don't need to spray crop protection out there. And so we're seeing some of those, and some of these robots are very small. I mean, we're talking very small, and mechanically go around and weed the non-crop, and so there's still work to be done, but whether it's mechanical or some other type of device that kills the weeds, that's one thing that we're starting to see for organic type farming on the pesticide side that deal with that. From a fertilizer side, you know, it's becoming a challenge. We see, at least in North America, more use of manures. And so we're trying to package manure from animals in a way to become fertilizer, or similar type, what do we call it? Basically, it's a natural fertilizer type stuff, not our traditional that are being used to supplement organic farming to help. I still think that we're, again, I don't know what's available in Sri Lanka and what your situations, but at least here in the US, manure is becoming more of a means to fertilizer the organic crops than traditional fertilizers, along with adding in some mechanical weeding where we used to be spraying. So did you want me to answer the drone question?
Yeah. So drone question. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I guess I would have to ask what the government, if they allow drones in Sri Lanka, are there laws against drones being used in Sri Lanka?
There are regulations, John, because you have to take special permission to lift a drone above a certain height.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so very similar to us in the US, we're only allowed to fly a certain height, and right now any drone that we fly, we have to be able to see with our eye. And so that limits our ability to probably take drones and use them efficiently and effectively in agriculture, because, you know, why, I don't know how far you can see, but you can only fly so far out and you can't see the drone. So, but within those limitations, we have seen drones starting to become an important part of scouting the crop. So as he presented, it's collecting valuable information on growth and health and bugs and, you know, other things along the way. And we can do that in a very small and controlled, you know, not too far away from a person, that's under basically managing that drone. And so they can be very effective, especially because I think a lot of the software today that processes, if you're collecting imagery with it, you can process that imagery fairly rapidly if you got good internet, to be able to identify issues and crop health or generate the NDVI, as he mentioned, things like that. So I would suspect, though, there's laws in play, and if you go and have someone that gets, I guess, certified or has the right to fly, that becomes an ability to collect quite a bit of data on farmland that could be informative to the farmer.
Okay, thank you very much, John. We thought the next question is to you because it's perfectly matched with Sri Lankan conditions. It's a lengthy question, I must tell you, but the Nishanka Jayasiri is focusing on the drainage in paddy fields, where paddy water moves from one land slot to the other, like in a cascade system. So the question is that in such a system, to implement the precision agriculture, precision irrigation scheduling, whether it is possible using the technologies in Sri Lankan condition.
So, can you
got the question
is
correct?
not much clear to me.
So the situation is like this. In Sri Lanka, if you look at the paddy cultivation, the water get drained out from one plot to another, right? In a cascade system. Okay. Now, in such a situation, how can these technologies become practical, for example, in implementing precision irrigation schedules?
Okay, so actually I was talking more about, you know, when the soil is drained, I think so that is not much, the soil is waterlogged at the initial stage of the cultivation. We don't have much control of soil moisture levels in the soils. So I'm thinking about not in the early stage of paddy crop cultivation. I think it's latter stage of the paddy crop cultivation where we need water, right? So there we maybe there's a huge potential of precision irrigation by using soil sensors. So this is not much and applicable for the early stage of paddy crop, right? For I think the latter stage of the paddy crop, this is more or less applicable. So just to mention, because these systems are even locally produced to measure the soil moisture content and use it wirelessly, as Professor Maujud also has mentioned it as in a chat message, right? Even in the Faculty of Agriculture, this system is developed, but we need to convert it to a kind of decision support system by considering the soil characteristics, right? Especially the water characteristics curve, right? And the climatic conditions, etc. So again, back to the question asked. So this sensing systems are more important when the soil is not waterlogged, because once the soil is waterlogged, I mean, we don't have much control of soil moisture. But there are some innovations in even in the Faculty of Agriculture. So the control height of the water level, right? So the automatic sluice gates, right, have been even developed by kind of in the agriculture engineering department, even in our faculty, right? So the control the height of the water of the paddy during the early stage of the cultivation.
Yeah, Vita, I saw the statement made by Professor Maujud, the work that has been done by Department of Agricultural Engineering. Since you focused on it, I'm not going to read that once again. There's a simple question by Dr. Saman Atauda, because you already said there are a lot of technologies that are being made available, and Dr. Atauda want to know, can't we suggest these techniques to the government to enhance productivity of Sri Lankan agriculture?
Yes, of course. That's why I think I wanted to highlight the way forward. So first, I think we have to identify the most appropriate technologies for different crop sectors. Right? Then we can ask the government for the policy related changes, right? Especially we are now going for more environmentally friendly agriculture, right? With the optimal usage of farm inputs. Even I noticed even the recent agriculture policy document, this precision agriculture is highlighted as a very important strategy to improve the productivity of the agriculture sector of Sri Lanka. But there we have to be very careful on selecting the most appropriate precision agriculture technologies and gradually introduce these precision agricultural technologies while developing the infrastructure, not only the machines and equipments, but mentality as well as the know-how of the field staff. So I think in the future, so in terms of policy decisions, it's very important to have more involvement of agriculture graduates at the field level, right, to help the wide adoption of precision agriculture in agricultural practices in Sri Lanka.
Thank you very much, Vita. I just came after a meeting to attend this session where the National Agriculture Policy for Food and Feed Crops are finalized. So what you said is pretty correct, that the recommendation and in terms of policy statements are there actually in this context. Well, there's a question from Professor Pradeepa Silva. It says, Professor Vitharana, how frequent the variability mapping should be done for a cultivated area or for a paddy track or something like that, as you speak about, as you usually identify them?
Yeah, that is a very important question. Normally, the approach I suggested was, first we divide the area into management zones based on the stable soil properties. Basically, the soil texture, one of the key soil property in soils of Sri Lanka, what we have observed, determining the other properties. So therefore, now there's the technology is available as, let's say, field kits to measure the soil nutrients at very low cost. So I would say it's better to measure the soil nutrient contents right at the beginning of each season, right? To have the optimal use of this precision agricultural or site-specific soil management practices. But for properties like soil nitrogen content, it's very difficult because nitrogen content is very highly variable. So that's why in decision support systems, they often use the inputs, in other inputs, nitrogen inputs, let's say from previous crop and from organic manure if used, right, to determine the nitrogen level. So in otherwise, other than that, it's good to have nutrient content measurements at the beginning of each season. Now, given the technologies there to measure the nutrient content at relatively low cost.
Okay, right. Thank you. Another question to you from Pavitra Vikramasinghe, who wants to know, because you're talking a lot about sensors and its use, want to know what are the other soil sensor platforms existing in addition to what you mentioned about, say about electrical conductivity?
Yeah, so I think even John a while ago mentioned about few other sensors. One of the sensors is to use the soil pH sensor, is available commercially, but the problem is pH sensor is, it's a kind of quite a large sensor. It is not portable as what I showed, but using that sensor, we can map and characterize the soil pH in large fields, not fields like what we observe in Sri Lanka. But on the top of that, there are other sensors. There's one sensor called gamma sensor, right? Gamma sensor is used for potassium determination, right? And VIS-NIR, that means visible, near infrared, as well as mid-infrared based sensors are available. Those are, let's say, on-the-go sensors as well as hand-operated sensors. Those can be used to measure the soil nutrient contents, right? And the top of that, there are sensors, right, to measure the soil organic carbon content as well. But those other sensors, let's say VIS sensor, visible sensor, and near infrared sensor, mid infrared sensors, those sensors requires a lot of calibration, so a lot of modeling to find out the nutrient contents. So even there are kind of global models, data banks are available to support to be used with such sensors. So there are a number of sensors available, but one of the sensors that's highly potential is this reflectance sensors, hand operated as well as electromagnetic induction sensors.
Right, thank you. John, I'm turning back to you now. Again, the question is related to the sensors. It's forwarded by Professor Dami Dayavanse. Now, what she says is the ground-based sensors are suitable to detect soil properties and other land-based information in relatively small land parcels. That's her statement. But then she wants to know what's the possibility of using freely available satellite remote sensing data for large area mapping of these characteristics with minimum ground-based measurements for calibration and verification. Over to you, John.
Our experience so far of using satellite-based has been very challenging to characterize soil properties. Though there is some new sensing technology that our government's put in play to understand moisture, in particular soil moisture, there seems to be some capabilities there that are new. I think to the question, you're probably trying to understand things like texture and other physical and potentially chemical characteristics that are important to understand to crop production. And satellite imagery, so far in my experience, has been pretty challenging to use as characterization for soil properties.
Okay, one last question because of the time limitation, John. We have almost now passed the time limit, 2 hours, because of the interest that is coming up from the audience. This last question again to you to wind up the whole session. You are from an academic background, and we are also interested in having precision agricultural technologies inbuilt to our system of education here, like in a university like University of Peradeniya. I have a lengthy explanation to tell you, but then without going into lengthy explanations, how best do you think that precision agricultural technologies can be co-opted to university curricula? You can think of a new curricula and an existing curricula, for example.
Yeah. Well, I would first note that Vita did a great job of mentioning that in the presentation, that the real need for education and that education is going to be fairly broad as well in my mind. And so to your point, I mean, we have some institutions that have developed just a precision ag curriculum. And so you get essentially a degree in precision ag. However, in many institutions, it becomes hard to do that without a lot of work and changes at the university. And so what we see a lot of times is development of new courses and revision of existing courses to really try and highlight some of the key skills and educational topics required for folks for students to understand precision agriculture. But agronomy becomes important, technology becomes important, potentially spatial analysis, so geostatistics, the geography to those kind of courses become important because they play or can play a role in production. And then business, of course, we want to know, and the questions have come is what's the value? Where's the value? And so that, to me, for us, falls under what we call agricultural business or ag economics. So you got to have, to me, the full suite of those, but make sure they focus on site-specific local management of not only using technology, but new practices and having new information available to inform the farmers. And so I just caution, it's not just an agronomy problem. It's not just an economics problem. It's not just a technology problem. And there's other things. It's not just a statistics / geostatistics and geography problem. It's a comprehensive problem of all those. And I explain to folks constantly that precision ag, as technology becomes, for example, in Sri Lanka, as more technology becomes available and farmers are able to have access to it and use it and adopt it, what that does, that converges all those disciplines and makes all of them, as an individual being a precision ag person, I've got to know a little bit of each one of those in order to be successful in what we're doing. I just can't be an agronomist. I got to understand the technology and the business. And so I'd encourage folks, as they think about education, it's got to be comprehensive, whether it's a full curriculum or in a revised curriculum, but it's got to touch on the various topics in order to be successful.
Thank you very much. It's a good piece of advice. So, ladies and gentlemen, every good thing when we start, we'll have to finish. So that's time is up right now. Thank you very much for being with us for the 2 hours. That has been very fruitful, and thank you very much for your active participation. This is the 6th iPURSE pre-conference webinar, which was held on the topic Precision Agriculture, Global Status and Prospects for Developing Countries. Our 2 resource persons today, Professor John Fulton, who made a presentation on the concept, technologies, and global status of precision agriculture, and Professor Vitharana, who made a presentation on potential of precision agriculture technologies for Sri Lanka. Thank you very much for this resourcefulness that we had in this particular workshop, seminar, and I'm sure the audience have got enough knowledge and experience out of the experience and the resourcefulness of you two had. And thank you very much for great presentations. Let me wind up right now, thanking everyone in the organizing committee, especially Professor Jivika Vireva, who coordinated the activity, and Mr. Malinda Prasad, who helped us in every possible corner with respect to handling the technical aspects of this presentation and the session. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Have a good day and good night. Thank you very much.
thank you very much. And I want to say compliments on your presentation. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot. So very good, very good.
Thank you very much, John. I enjoyed your presentation a lot, but my presentation was not that technical, so I was a little bit kind of hesitant as well. So it's kind of two kind of different corners, like, but I had to address our kind of conditions. That's what happened actually. So thank you very much, John, for accepting my invitation. Especially I communicated with you regarding the workshop, and you gave a very good positive answer, and I'm really happy about that. So thanks again, John.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. And I you know, one of my, I would love to visit sometime Sri Lanka and learn more, not only about the, you know, farming, but really about the university, and would love to sit down and have a personal visit with you as well. So that's one of my goals in life is to get to Sri Lanka. I've always been interested in what.
So John, we can invite you as a invited professor to the faculty. I think it will be a great opportunity for us as well to invite you and join with our faculty and even deliver invited lectures, as well as provide other supports. And I can proceed with that if I can provide some information regarding that possibility as well. So there may be some opportunities for us also to invite to the faculty and work with us as well.
Sounds good. Thank you. Well, have a good evening, and thank you again, and look forward to meeting you or seeing you in person sometime.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. I endorse what Professor Vitha just mentioned. Having you as a visiting professor will be great, and we would like to engage more with you. And I hope that it is okay to upload this video recording to our website, the
Yes.
entire presentation. Will that be okay with you?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And we really appreciate your support. And also I should thank my friend and colleague, Professor Vitharana, formally for joining us. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.